Welcome back to the UFOcast Does Doctor Who. This is the second half of our 7th Doctor World Cup. This was a show of 2 parts, as I think I mentioned last time. We recorded the first half up to the end of the quarterfinals, along with our group stages, and then ran out of time. But it meant that when we reconvened, we had a lot more time to do the semis and the final. So there's a lot of waffle about those final 4 stories. And no, I won't say anything else. Enjoy this podcast. So, let's move on to the quarterfinals of this.
Yes.
And for quarterfinal A, this is the Curse of Fenwick against Silver Nemesis. So, can I just have quickly your scores, please? And then we'll argue it out.
So, just for clarity, it's a 2 for a win and a 1 for a lose.
No, it's just a case of which would you would you score for?
That's even easier. Okay, who would you want to go first?
Well, I'll go first. 1 for Curse of Fenwick.
Yep.
2 for Curse of Fenwick.
It's a 3. 3 for Curse of Fenwick.
Okay, so 4-0 win. Michael, you said you quite liked Silver Nemesis, but why doesn't it beat Curse of Fenwick?
Very little things in the world beat Curse of Fenwick. It's got vampires. It's set in Northumberland. As I've said before in the past, there's not a lot of stories set up my way. It's got computers. It's got a lot of backstory. It's got a completely believable demon. It's got the old ones. And Silver Nemesis has just got some nice things that are wheeled out. And like you've said, I'll put my hands up and agree with you. It's the same storyline as Remembrance of the Daleks, only with Cybermen, and they're not as good. Right? I don't like the things like the Doctor's Pocket Watch, I love, but you've got Curse of Fenwick, which is just great. And Sophie puts in a much better performance here as well. It's just a gorgeous story for me.
Cool. Siobhan?
8 words. So, we play the game again, Time Lord. What an amazing kick-ass out of the blue cliffhanger that was. We had no idea who Fenwick was. And, was it... You didn't get the feeling it was an old enemy. But somehow it just made it even worse. Fenwick is magnificent. They really pulled the stops out on Fenwick without any doubt whatsoever. Yes, they had trouble with the weather. But if we move on to the DVD, special edition was being graded down and, had the colours done. It looks a lot better. And the whole Ace subplot kicking in, which is ironic because it's in the same group as Silver Nemesis with the chess set in Lady Painthorpe's study.
Yes.
Silver Nemesis, unfortunately, is JNT's idea of a fun run-around celebration. And I believe Kevin Clarke, the writer, didn't know what he was going to come up with. And when he went in for the interview, he said, let's make Doctor Who God. And he got asked, the stuff about the Doctor's past is great. It's just everything around it. I mean, the music, the Cybermen. Oh, Silver Nemesis. Paint them silver. Really silver. Make them shiny. Ooh, chrome. We like chrome. There's a couple of iffy effect shots. The idea of the Cybermen being held off by a girl with a catapult firing gold coins is... On top of that, you've got them walking up with a scanning device and suddenly... gold, and they scarp her. It's just no. Though it does have Courtney Pine there, so that's a bonus.
Yes.
There, I've got it out of my system.
Yep. No, I
This is
agree with all
therapy.
that.
This is therapy. You're right.
Silver Nemesis is just laughable.
It should be called Nadir of the Cybermen.
Silly Nemesis.
I mean, to be fair, Nightmare in Silver, there's a theme there. The 2 Cybermen stories with silver in the title are awful. Yes, and I agree with all the comments about Fenwick. Fenwick, I think, must be the first Sylvester McCoy story that I saw because my brother picked it up on VHS quite early on, which means I didn't see the broadcast version for years afterwards, because when I bought it on DVD, I then just watched the movie version on the DVD. So, and the broadcast version has issues in that bits don't make sense because they had to cut them for time. But because I experienced the longer version of the story first off, I've never had a problem with that. And there's so much going on. I love Nicholas Parsons. We have to mention Nicholas Parsons playing the vicar. And again, I think, I can't remember whether Curse of Fenwick came first or Just a Minute came first for me. I probably discovered them about a similar time. And the idea of this game show host, comedian, playing it absolutely straight, beautiful portrayal of this guy losing his faith. And the whole story is about, on one level, is about faith and what you put your faith in, and the idea that can be weaponized to defeat vampires was brilliant. And I'm probably not as fond of the scheming doctor, which is perhaps it's partly why I've never been interested in the New Adventures. But
blasphemer.
For me, I guess this is perhaps the one story for me where that works. And I suppose also the fact that it shows the weakness of the Doctor being that because he doesn't trust Ace and doesn't tell her, she blurts out things to the wrong people because she's a wolf of Fenwick. Because he doesn't trust her, she throws up her wall of faith to fight off the ancient vampire, the ancient Hemivore, who has switched sides. And there's all that kind of stuff of like, if only the Doctor had let Ace into his confidence, the bad stuff wouldn't have happened. So I like that explanation, that exploration of the Doctor's go.
Well, I mean, that's just it. Was she linked to him somewhere?
Well, yes, you could have. You could slice it up different ways, but I think it shows up the weaknesses of the Machiavellian Doctor, and I like that he comes out on top, but not without.
It's a very harsh scene.
Yeah.
Can we just give a shout out to Ace's chat-up lines?
Maybe let's not.
Okay.
Before we move on, can I just say, when I was a lot younger, I was in an ITV kids drama called Kappa 2, I think it was, and Nicholas Parsons was playing intergalactic game show host. So in between takes, I think Rula Lenska was in it as well. So I'd taken a few things along to get signed during the filming break. There is a complicated reason why I was in it, but that's not important. What is important is that when it was sort of the three of us together, Nicholas Parsons was just so happy to talk about Fenwick, and he was just so proud of it. It was just nice to experience. Because he didn't need to be that enthusiastic about the part, but he was, and it was just lovely. So I just needed to give a quick shout out for that. So I apologise for distracting everyone.
That's fine.
In the quarterfinal.
I mean, I could tell my Nicholas Parsons story, but it would ruin your Nicholas Parsons story, so I won't.
Tony, before we move on to quarterfinal B, any thoughts on Fenwick and Silver Nemesis?
I've got nothing to add to what everybody else has said, Curse of Fenwick, because you've all covered pretty much everything. Silver Nemesis is, the reason I said the Deer of the Cybermen, it's the moment the gold thing becomes ridiculous.
It is.
And it undermines them completely as a monster. The point at which they're so allergic to it, it's just embarrassing. And also, there's a lot of things. Silver Nemesis just doesn't feel like anybody actually thought the plot through properly. There's some stuff in there that's really good. As I said, like most Doctor Who stories, there's always something in there that's worth getting your teeth into. I think Lady Painful is brilliant. And I can't remember the name of her.
Richard.
And Richard is very good as well. That sort of pairing is very good. But the things like the social workers. The Nazis who are just like, I mean, Anton Diffring is a sort of World War II film legend, but he's clearly got no idea what he's
They got him so that he could come over to watch Wimbledon.
Yeah, well, that explains it all.
Seriously.
I mean, he does a reasonable job, but he's obviously got no interest in what he's doing at all.
Who is Dolores Thingamybobby?
Oh yeah, she's an American. She's an American Broadway musicals person.
That's why.
Yeah, that whole thing is just, there's lots of it's sort of patchworky, and as you said, fundamentally it's undermined.
It surely is, honey. It surely is.
And fundamentally it's undermined by the fact that Remembrance of the Daleks has done exactly the same thing, but far, far, far better about 5 weeks beforehand.
Yeah.
I mean, what gets me is Ace actually turns around and says, "Oh, you clobbed him like you did the Daleks."
Yeah. Something like we know what we've just done. Yes.
Sorry,
Cool.
I was miming shock and surprise there on the camera, but of course you can't hear that, can you?
Moving on to quarterfinal B, the Greatest Show in the Galaxy against the Happiness Patrol. So quickly, scores on the doors.
Happiness Patrol for me.
Okay.
Greatest Show. To be fair, I'm quite willing to give them both 0.
Okay, Siobhan?
This is tough. I'm going to do what I did last time round, go for enjoyability factor. I'd have liked Greatest Show if it was 3 episodes long. So I'm going for Happiness Patrol, because Happiness Patrol is beautiful.
Okay, and I'm joining you on that. So that's a win for the Happiness Patrol, which goes through to the next round. Siobhan, Happiness Patrol, why does that float your boat?
Oh, I wish they'd made it in black and white and given it a film grain look. Oh, it has its problems. I mean, let's not mention their buggy that is slower than walking. But it's a convincing world that's been built up, this colony planet, where being sad is illegal, punishable by death. That's quite a horrific concept when you think about it. Revisited in Smile during Capaldi's era, if you think about it. And I've lost track of what I was going to say. Give me 2 seconds. Yes. And there are some beautiful themes going on there. The monsters aren't too badly designed, even Fifi. We've got the political commentary, of course, for the Happiness Patrol. There is a theory, I'm not sure if it's true or not, I don't know what the writer intended, but the Killjoys are essentially gay people. And this is Thatcher's government hunting down the gay community, which in the 80s was what was happening.
Yes.
So there's that, but on top of that, there is, and it's a crowning jewel. Throw down your guns. That scene on the balcony where he just talks 2 snipers out of killing anyone and gets them to drop their guns. It's wonderful. It also leads to a lovely joke in the New Adventures, again, where the Doctor thinks that on his gravestone was going to be pull the trigger, end my life, was meant to be metaphorical. But that scene is I'm sorry, that is just a highlight. It really is. Greatest Show is fun. It's nice. It's well put together, especially the limitations they were under. It's an episode too long for me, I think. And then there's WizKid.
Tony.
The Happiness Patrol is one of my favourite Doctor Who stories of all time. I think it's very clever. I think it works on, and this, oh God, I always think I sound like Brian Laurie critic when I say this. It works on a number of levels. There's a political allegory in there. There's an allegory about, well, not an allegory. There's the thing about grief and happiness being the opposite sides of the same coin. There's a lovely thing about melancholy being sometimes a warm, pleasant thing, not necessarily a bad, unhappy thing, and using the blues as the illustration of that. I love the way, I love the design of it, people always go on about, it looks really like a studio set, but the whole thing is a Potemkin village writ large. It's supposed to look artificial because it's an artificial place. It's built on artificiality. It's a suite.
It's built to be happy, to look happy, except it's run down.
It's the sugar house at the centre of Hansel and Gretel. That's what it is.
Yes.
And that's what it's supposed to look like that. And I love and people bring up the buggy, which is fine because it's stupid, but it's such a tiny part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it's just got some very dark moments in it as well. The way the throwaway way they kill Harold B with the terrible joke. With the terrible joke.
Harold Innocent.
Yeah. And the way that Doctor tricks the Happiness Patrol agent into basically having himself killed.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant story. It's an amazing story. I love it so much. The Greatest Show in the Galaxy I do like a lot, and I like the fact that they made the most of an accident that forced them to record in the car park.
Yeah. Elstree car.
In a tent.
Yeah, in a tent, and that all works very well because it makes it all feel a bit different to a lot of other Doctor Who stories. And I like most of the performances in it. Apart, I don't like WizKid because I think it's too obviously a dig at Doctor Who fans. And don't make a television program where you don't like your own fans. It's just, what's the point?
It's not just the fans though. It has a dig at.
Well, no,
it's the whole thing. Yeah. It's the whole shebang.
But it's not as good as it used to be.
On anything, pretty much anything would lose to the Happiness Patrol at this stage. So that.
Okay. Michael, you're the sole voice voting for Greatest Show over Happiness Patrol.
And I can sort this really, really easily. Yes, I understand the WizKid thing, but can I just say, and I think you'll agree, Candyman design.
I love that.
Nah.
That's it.
Brilliant.
Go.
I think it's brilliant. I mean, it's a shame it wasn't how it should have been.
Yeah.
But it's just...
Oh, no, I get it. As a grown-up, I get it.
That is sheer brava.
Right.
That's just...
As a grown-up, totally get it.
In your face.
Right. We just watched Remembrance of the Daleks. I was finally in a position to be able to turn to the whole world and go, hey, yeah, I was right. You were all wrong. Doctor Who's fantastic. And then Bertie Bassett turns up and you go, I'll go back in my corner, shall I? Right. That is where I was at. It's a scar that's never left me. Now, I've got huge issues with Greatest Show in the Galaxy as well. I'm not an idiot. You're right. Don't pick on your own fans because it's just stabbing yourself for no reason. And it's not perfect, but I do like the Gods of Ragnarok, and without those, we wouldn't have had the Elder God stories and all that business that came later. Some cracking stuff from Big Finish that comes from these tales, and Happiness Patrol just looked too obviously an allegory. Yes, I mean, even as a kid, I was sort of watching it going, yeah, this is just meant to be us. And also, you can watch it in black and white. There are some buttons on your remote that let you do so. That's fine, right? So that's not a problem. It's just, again, we'll come down to, I've got a few hours to kill. What do I put in? All right, yeah. Actually, you know what? I've just remembered Sylvester McCoy playing the spoons. Yeah. It's a knife edge. Like I said at the beginning, could go either way on this one. It's fine. Let's move on.
I've got to say, Michael, you just reminded me of something. In 1988, I was a member of the Jersey the Jersey Star Trek fan club. And every week, someone would bring round something that wasn't Star Trek to show to the rest of the group. We each took it in turns. And for me, Remembrance of the Daleks and Happiness Patrol had just been on, and I had them on the same videotape. And of course, chucked that in and said, this is why I like it. Remembrance of the Daleks played out. They were all, oh, that's amazing. That's great. Then they saw the Candyman.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, but I still love him. I love him to bits, but that really was I just want the sofa to swallow me moment.
Yeah.
But only Doctor Who would do that.
Oh, yeah.
There's no other television series.
Lost in Space might have done something like that.
No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't have done that. They wouldn't have done it. The whole point is, it's like it's yeah. the Candyman design, it's a brilliant. Oh yeah, the theoretical design they were going to give it sounds wonderful, but actually it would have looked quite. I think it would have looked a bit bland. Whereas making him
just another Doctor Who monster,
making him look like Bertie Bassett, it's that whole thing of making things that aren't supposed to be threatening.
No, you're right. As an adult watching in, you're going, oh yeah, I get it, right? I totally get it on all the levels. You're like, brilliant. Fifi was superb. I loved that puppet. Susan Moore did such a great job, right? That was the highlight of the whole thing for me, right? And it was, it's Mrs. Thatcher. Oh, it's a metaphor. Oh, this is happening. Oh, yeah, I get all that, right? And I get more of it as I've got older, and I can see it on all the levels. But my initial reaction was yours of hide me in the sofa. That was it. So
okay.
I remember. I mean, it's quite fascinating that when Cartmell's book Script Doctor came out, ended up on Newsnight.
Yeah.
I know, it was a surprise
because the Happiness Patrol about trying to bring down the government.
Well, obviously it worked, because then 9 years to the day, we're back to the Fry and Laurie sketch.
Please don't. No, I don't take me into the real world.
Yeah, you don't want to know about the
No,
real
I know.
world.
Anyway,
No.
I'm not going to say much about either of these two because I think you have said it all between you. I'm not overly fond of either of these stories, but I do prefer Happiness Patrol to Greatest Show. And I will say, unlike you, Siobhan, the whole talking the snipers down scene, I just find totally cringeworthy and unbelievable.
Really?
But it's still.
I am genuinely surprised by your reaction to that.
And you're wrong.
Yeah, you are wrong.
No, I mean, again, different strokes for different strokes for different folks. It just doesn't work for me at all. But I mean, yes, and it does have one of the most horrific scenes of Doctor Who ever, and that's where they drown the guy in the fondant fancy, which I find it every time I watch it. I find it really difficult to watch that scene. Which is not to say it's bad. I'm just saying it's really well done, and just horrific.
May I ask how you felt about Ace nearly drowning in Battlefield?
Or is it
totally different context? I think it's just that idea of drowning somebody in molten sweets.
I'll make a note
although
it's if I may.
It's clearly BBC Gunge with some kind of bits of sugar or whatever in it. But it just works on a visceral level for me. And I'm not saying, I still don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing for me as far as the story's concerned. But I put it through ahead of Greatest Show, which just doesn't really do anything for me. Though I have very fond memories of meeting the actress who plays Flower Child at Hooverville one year, because I interviewed her on stage, and she seemed to take quite a shine to me. So, moving on. Quarterfinal C, Ghostlight v Survival. I think I know how this one's going to go, but anyway,
So do
Tony.
I'm going to go Ghostlight.
Yeah.
No, not
Siobhan?
strongly, but yeah.
You see, I was going to write down at the start of this, I forgot to say, I was going to write down my prediction for the winner of the entire thing. And I didn't, and I was going to sort of put it there and then open it up at the end, see if I got it right. I'm going Ghostlight. Enough said.
Michael?
Sorry, Luke. Ghostlight.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. It's a 3-1 to Ghostlight.
But I'd love to Survival.
Yeah.
We will say that. Tough break on the groupings, love.
So,
why do all of you love Ghostlight?
So let's talk about one of the allegedly most complicated stories in Doctor Who history. I just really enjoy the atmosphere of it. That fundamentally is it for me. I like the way it feels. And I like some of the throwaway. It has a certain sort of Douglas Adams-y quality to it. And
precisely the words I was going to use.
and it's got Sophie Aldred in a dinner jacket.
The other things I was going to mention as well.
That's me done for that one.
I don't think we're alone in saying that. That's fine. Yeah. It's
Why are all men perverts?
So Siobhan,
embarrassed silence now.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, it was just great, and it was a great moment. And you know what? She doesn't get out of that bloody bomber jacket very often, and it was just nice. Right. I'm not going to say that that's the only reason you like Ghostlight. That's ridiculous. It's complicated. It makes you think. It makes you question what's going on. And there's that whole thing about would the audience rather be bored or confused? And the answer's always going to be confused, because then you think about it. And yeah, there's stuff I still didn't grasp for years later. But then I thought about it and came to a conclusion, and it was right. And I like Ghostlight. And I already discussed why I prefer it to Survival. So that's why it wins for me on this one.
Okay. Siobhan, Ghostlight.
Oh my word, where to start? Set design, absolutely stunning. Lighting, amazing, especially for that era. The script, so many layers to it, so many double meanings to words. It's also one of the most literary, I can never say this, literary scripts going. The amount of references to books throughout all 3 episodes being thrown away is... I mean, we've mentioned Douglas Adams. Who was it who said that Earthmen never invite their ancestors to dinner? Light being played completely differently to how you'd expect John Hallam to play something. And it just makes it more chilling as a result. This is not a doctor's plan per se. He's brought Ace to this house she told him about that gave her nightmares, where something terrible happened, to get her to face a fear. What a bastard. And you can understand her being, upset with this. And it's remarkable, especially for the line, tricky things, mammoths, if I'm honest with you. It is the last serial made for the classic series, and it shows just how good they got. It's brilliant. It really is. So there we go.
Okay. So I read the book first, which means I've never got the whole I don't understand it, because the book allows the story to breathe and kind of explain the bits that you might not have understood if you'd watched what is a very truncated version. Because it could have done with a 4th episode, couldn't it? Let's be fair.
I think we're all in agreement on that.
It just leaves me cold. I don't disagree. Again, I don't disagree with a lot of what you said about the good things about it.
If we're talking about people dressed in dinner suits, that mantis dressed in a dinner suit, that's that's an image that'll stay with you forever. That was actually a decent Doctor Who monster. We lit up like there's no tomorrow, and still looked superb.
Yes. No, I mean, visually it's great, and there's some interesting stuff going on in the script. I mean, I think perhaps my biggest issue with it is that it plays into the cliche of pitting science against religion, which is a fundamentally false idea. Which is not to say that Reverend Matthews is not a realistic character. Of course, you would have had vicars like that, who would have had problems with the theory of evolution. But equally, you would have had plenty who didn't. And so I think that aspect of the story.
Well, how many vicars were all fossil collectors and researchers? And
exactly. So, it just leaves me cold. And I don't think there's anything more to say about Survival. But if it's a choice between watching one or the other, like you've said many times in this podcast, Michael, I put Survival on because I just enjoy it more. Ghostlight just leaves me cold.
At the end of the day, isn't it?
But I recognise why people enjoy it, just not for me. Moving swiftly on, quarterfinal D, Paradise Towers against Remembrance of the Daleks. I think this is a very easy score. Yeah. Is anybody voting for Paradise Towers?
No.
I want to, but I can't.
Okay, so that's a straight 4-0. We haven't talked about Remembrance yet. Why Remembrance?
I'm pretty sure we'll be talking about that at the end. Remembrance.
I'm not so sure.
Are you not? Okay, then.
Splendid.
Right, Remembrance of the Daleks. You've got the 60s setting, you've got Professor X, for me. You've got people who say they were on the wrong side in the war, making it a lot more grey. You've got the Dalek Civil War, but then you've got unlimited rice pudding. So you've got so much quotable stuff. You've got you can just see that McCoy is the Doctor here. Nobody else is there. And it gave birth to Countermeasures, which is one of the greatest audio spin-off series you'll ever come across. So, yeah. Remembrance of the Daleks just rocks. And I've watched it so many times.
Yeah, it's so rewatchable. It's so rewatchable. Yeah. And although I was the one that spoke up for Paradise Tales in the first round, there's no contest. No, absolutely no contest. This and Fenwick are my most watched Sylvester McCoy stories. It's so much fun. The book's great as well. If you like Aronovich's writing, then obviously you should be reading Rivers of London. Plug for that.
Very much so.
But it's just like, and we've also said the plot is very similar to Silver Nemesis, but this does it first and does it so well. The idea of the Doctor having brought this weapon with him, that's what he, and I'm not, as I've said before, I'm not overly keen on unpacking the first Doctor's past, but I'll give it a pass. That's why the Doctor was here, was hiding this weapon, although he didn't know about the Daleks back then, so what he was hiding this weapon for then, interesting. The little girl,
he's rewritten his own history, it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. The girl who's part of the battle computer, brilliant idea, because you're like,
lovely
what
twist,
is she doing?
Bait and twist, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Lovely twist where, because fans were assuming that was Davros under that thing, and then it's like, no, he's inside the Imperial Emperor.
It's Davros the golf ball.
Spoilers, by the way, folks.
Yes. It's probably Kef's best score. I think, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, it's a very enjoyable score from Kef. It's the only one left in the competition now. And I love the 60s. I love the 60s setting.
This was the story that restored my faith in Doctor Who. After season 24, which I like more now than I did at the time. I watched that first episode of that story and I thought, I was right. Doctor Who is the best television series ever made, and that was it. That's all it needed. That's why I love Remembrance of the
Daleks. For me, there's a huge amount to unpack, which I'll try and do really quickly. I can't remember if it was The Face or Enemy called it one of the reasons to be alive in 1988. And as Tony has said, it was suddenly, oh my God, it's back. And there's this, what's this extra mystery? Oh my God, we've got something extra going on, which we'd hardly ever had before. Sylvester has suddenly found his feet hugely. Countermeasures, Intrusion Countermeasures group, absolutely superb. Great effects. My God, they actually built the shuttle. The Daleks were a bit wobbly, and they never worked out which Dalek had which voice. The bait and switch of the little girl actually being in the battle computer and not Davros, wonderful. Jackie Toombs, as she is now, wrote a fanzine article that basically said, oh God, no, not the Grunder Hunter, when McCoy had been originally cast. But she went on to say that she was in the room full of students and they put Doctor Who on. And right at the end of that episode, everyone yelled, "Get to the stairs!" Followed by a silence and one person going, "Oh shit." That's a cliffhanger. Yeah, it's got to be Remembrance. Plus, the book, the novelization is a template for the New Adventures.
So, listeners, for you, it has been seconds. For the four of us, it has been weeks, because we ran out of time, and so we had to stop at the end of our quarterfinal section of the podcast. So, we are diving back in weeks later to talk about the final four in the semi-finals and final and third, fourth place playoff of the Sylvester McCoy 7th Doctor World Cup. So, to remind my fellow podcasters who may or may not have forgotten where we're at.
Who are you
we
again?
Have two semi-finals. Professor Yaffle, I believe.
Right.
We have two semi-finals. We have an all-season 26 semi-final, Curse of Fenric against Ghost Light, and we have an all-season 25 semi-final, Remembrance of the Daleks against the Happiness Patrol. So, I want your votes for semi-final 1, Curse of Fenric against Ghost Light. Michael.
Hold on. Before I talk about this is actually Ghost Light related. Right. In our last recording session, Siobhan made a very interesting point going by. Now, I'm not saying that I'm the sort of person who lets stuff get to me or I dwell on anything. Oh, no. However, Siobhan did say, why are all men pervs when discussing Sophie Aldred in a suit? Now, can I just say, it's not just men who like Sophie Aldred in a suit by a substantial line. And I think you'll find that you can go to Gallifrey one, and I think I'll be backed up on that one. Also, happening to like Sophie Aldred at that point, and in my, what I can only describe as formative years, I didn't exactly have a lot of say in the reaction that Sophie was going to have. Right? I was just kind of blown away by the fact that Sophie was in the suit, and I was just impressed. I wasn't going to re-examine the feelings. I was just looking. So, all men might be pervs, but I'm not going to stand for it being linked with that particular phrase. So I'm not after an apology, but I did need to defend my statement.
I would like to say that by saying that why are all men pervs, I am not saying that all women aren't pervs as well.
That is fair enough.
I will cast aspersions equally.
That is not a problem. Right, anyway, Ghost Light versus Curse of Fenric, which is the actual question you asked me.
What a pain.
I've been so torn about this. I love Ghost Light so much, but I did rant and rave about Curse of Fenric, and you know what? It's going to be, if this was the actual football match, it would be one of those things that would come down to extra time. And the thing that has got extra time is Curse of Fenric, because it's literally got extra time. You've got the special editions, you've got everything. Ghost Light's one episode too short, and you could really do with that extra episode just for exposition. That's my vote. That's where I'm coming from. So move on. Ask someone else.
Okay. Well, I've already scored it 1, so that's Curse of Fenric 2, Ghost Light 0. So, Siobhan.
I disagree with Ghost Light being an episode too short for exposition's sake. It's all there. You don't need that extra episode, to be fair. But it would be nice to have it. But I am torn over this. It really, it's come to the point now where we're looking at the McCoy classics, and it's a case of how the hell do you choose? Okay, I'm going to say Fenric, simply because of the cliffhanger of episode 3. So we play the game again, Time Lord, which was so out of the blue. Nicholas Parsons' performance blew everyone away. And as indeed did, was it Alfred Lynch who played Millington?
Yes.
We had great actors in there. I mean, we had great actors in Ghostlight, but there was just more of it in Curse of Fenric. Yeah, it's got to be Fenric, and that's to take nothing away from Ghostlight.
Okay. So, if you're going to speak up for Ghostlight, Tony, it's not going to save it, but what are you going to say for this one?
This is a tough call, but I suppose all the semi-finals are going to be tough calls. I will give my vote to Curse of Fenric. There's a lot, obviously, to like about Ghostlight. I don't think it's an episode too short. Sorry, too short. Too short. I think it's, as Siobhan said, it's all there, I think. Myself, anyway. But Curse of Fenric there's something really epic about Curse of Fenric. It just has that feeling about, it's like the culmination of a number of different story arcs, particularly Ace's story arc. I once had a conversation with Bethany Black.
Oh, why?
Because I asked her, because she said that Ace's storyline is the storyline of the coming out of a lesbian.
Now you see the perceived wisdom on this is the storyline of Ace discovering her sexuality. Whether that means lesbian or not, I don't know. It's her reaching sexual maturity.
I think I think what Siobhan said is probably is that Curse of Fenric is Ace coming of age, for want of a better phrase, and that survival is the final is the lesbian part of the arc.
Yes, I'd go with that.
Now you can take that as you will. I think it's an interesting theory, but I do think the Curse of Fenric is it just feels like the end, the beginning of the end of the Ace arc, and you can see that had there been a season 27, you could see how they would have phased Ace out, because her story was with the Doctor was done. The Doctor had done what he'd set out to do with Ace. However comfortable you feel with that manipulation, but just there's something about Curse of Fenric. I like the World War II setting. I'm a bit of a World War II geek, so I like the World War II setting, and all the sort of references to that setting. I like the moral of the story, that faith in something matters more necessarily than faith in a god, and it's quite a brave decision to make a Russian revolutionary believe in the revolution as the thing rather than some mysterious other thing. Nicholas Parsons is brilliant in it, but I think the performances across the board are brilliant in it, and the fact that a lot of it is set outside really helps as well, I think.
Wouldn't it have been great on film?
Yeah, it would have been. It would have been fantastic. Yeah. I mean, I actually think the Curse of Fenric, I know they did it on the special edition on the DVD, but Curse of Fenric you could make into a Doctor Who movie.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah.
So I have to give it to Curse of Fenric. Much as I like many things about Ghostlight, it's got to be Curse of Fenric.
Okay. Well, as I said, I've already given a vote to Curse of Fenric, so that makes it 4-0.
Why?
I would echo a lot of what you'd say. I mean, obviously, I largely disagree with the whole faith thing that, as Tony just outlined it. But I've waxed lyrical about that at other points, and the whole God complex being a companion piece. That if faith can be weaponized, then it can also be used against a person. So I think there's a nice sort of bookend between those two ideas in Curse of Fenric and God complex. Even if I think ultimately that's a misunderstanding of what faith is about, because I do think it matters massively what you put your faith in, as well as kind of whatever faith you have. But I think if faith is expressed on the level of being trust,
I've always taken it as read in the Doctor Who universe that faith creates the personal faith, your own in your own head, creates a certain type of psionic wavelength.
Yes.
And that's what was jamming the other things.
Yes.
So that's a pseudoscientific way of getting round the argument of what you've got faith in. It's the actual mind thing. It doesn't matter.
I totally accept that on the rules of on the rules laid down in this story, it works. I don't have a problem with kind of saying this is the rules of how Curse of Fenric works, and then you can extrapolate that to saying, well, if there's a way of harnessing that to weaponize it, then you could have a monster that could feed off it. That happens to be related to the Naimon. I mean, that's all lovely, fan-wanky Doctor Who. So I think like entering into the world of the story, I love it. I just think that that it's worth kind of unpacking kind of what faith actually means in the real world. So yeah, and I think this is an easier question for me because I saw Curse of Fenric very early on in my fan days.
Child
on VHS. Sort of, I don't know, mid-90s. So it was only, I mean, this is the thing, it was only a few years old when I saw it on VHS. And although I appreciate the cleverness of the idea behind Ghostlight, like the whole idea of a spaceship where there's a control experiment and then a one that evolves and there's somebody a controlling intelligence comparing the two. I mean, it's a beautiful idea. The whole Victorian house setting, all the sort of the doctors brought you here to kind of confront your greatest fear thing. That just doesn't really work for me. So it's a much easier decision, I think, to say Fenwick for me.
Can I also just say that only last month was when I discovered the whole business about Control not being the person who controls the ship, because I was watching the Blu-ray. Now, I'm 48 now. I really, really should have grasped that earlier, right? But until watching some, I think it was when all the writers sit around in the bar and chat, and he's going, oh yes, well, of course, that's what it means, and I had no idea anybody else wouldn't have got that. And I'm sort of sat there in bed about 1 o'clock in the morning going, oh my God, I'd only just got that. What an idiot. So yeah, it wasn't obvious, and I'm sorry. You're right.
Michael, would you like us to never mention this again?
It's fine. Mention as much as you want. I don't care.
I wonder if we can make him start twitching.
I do think, to be fair to you, Michael, that and we've already talked about this, the whole kind of, does it need 3 parts, does it need 4 parts, all that kind of stuff. The fact that it is pared to the bone to fit it into 75 minutes means that there's a lot of stuff that you have to pick up as the viewer. Like, it's not explicit that Control is the control group of this scientific experiment.
That's the word that was missing, yes.
Well, exactly. I mean, because she's not a group, she's just one person, isn't she?
That is also true, yeah.
So there's an element of going, and if your only exposure to the story is the 3-part original broadcast version, you have to sit down and do a lot of thinking afterwards to pick through everything that's going on. If you read the book first, like I did, or if you've seen the extended version with the time code on that was on the DVD or the version that's on the Blu-ray, then I think the story has more time to breathe and explain stuff. But I don't think you're alone, because it's consistently what the story where everybody goes, I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, but it's like Blade Runner in that sense.
Do you think it was deliberately made for the video age rather than a television audience?
No, I think you can argue that.
I was going to say the same thing. Was it the sort of first, in inverted commas, Doctor Who story made deliberately aware that people were going to rewatch it?
It's the thought, isn't it?
No, I think it's the other way around. I think it was the first thing to profit from being able to go back and go watch it over and over again, because we did. I know, I taped it on Betamax. I watched it until the tape wore out. It was fantastic, but, you know, not everyone else was going to do that. Curse of Fenwick is just glorious, and it just gets better with different editions. So I think we've done right. But arguably, like so happened as before, this could have been the final.
Yeah, easily.
Yes, I mean, this is the thing. This could have been the final.
Well, actually, I was going to say one other thing. Sorry. I would love to know what the general public, the non-Doctor Who geek viewer, made of Ghostlight.
It's a thought, isn't it? I mean, do you remember the complaints during Moffat's run?
Baffled by...
Well, do you remember the complaints during Moffat's run that Doctor Who was too complicated now?
Yeah.
Yes.
The kids are saying, "Oh no, we follow it." It's the adults who couldn't follow it. It's
it's always been the case, because kids have got time on their hands in order to be able to think about stuff and mull over things. Adults have got too distracted by mortgages and wallpaper and carpets to have to give over that extra bit of time innocence to the bestest TV program. It's not innocence, it's just you get distracted by nonsense and rubbish by growing up. Please, can we discuss the next program?
Yeah. Anyway, so semi-final. Okay. So although the score would imply that it was a complete thrashing by Curse of Fenwick to Ghostlight, but actually I think we've nuanced that.
It's edged it.
So semi-final 2 is Remembrance of the Daleks against the Happiness Patrol.
Oh God.
And I've scored this straight away. This was easy for me. I talked about this last time. That although I can see a lot of merit in Happiness Patrol, there's various bits that just don't work for me. To be positive about it, Remembrance of the Daleks is just brilliant. It's just absolutely brilliant. I enjoy Resurrection, but it's flawed. I realise that other people love Revelation a lot. It doesn't do much for me. And Destiny is. Destiny's got a lot more going for it, I think, than its reputation would suggest. But essentially, Remembrance of the Daleks is like the best Dalek story since Genesis. In fact, I would probably go better because I'm not the biggest fan of Genesis. So this is like a huge return to form for the show. It's like the best Dalek story in like forever. And it's Ben Aronovich basically not knowing what he can't do. I know he's basically gone on record saying that, essentially. He's like, I didn't know what I couldn't do, and so I wrote it, and Cartmel went, let's do it, and JNT clearly managed to pull the budget strings to make it happen. But it's just lovely. Daleks fighting Daleks, the little girl battle computer, the setting. And you know me, Michael in particular, we've had conversations about this. I'm not overly a fan of the whole sort of linking it all back to the First Doctor thing, but for some reason, I'll give it a pass, even though they spelt the name on the gate wrong. And I know that there's a sort of New Adventures, Missing Adventures explanation for that.
There is?
Yeah, there's a Time Lord who has a TARDIS that's disguised as the junkyard, and it says "I am Foreman."
Sorry, no, that's not New Adventures. That's Eighth Doctor.
Yeah,
Adventures.
it's that story where it's the Third Doctor. Count. No, it's a Third Doctor and Eighth Doctor crossover.
Spoilers for anybody who hasn't read
them. Because the Third Doctor ends up regenerating early. Yeah, we're spoiling a book that was 25 years old. That no one read.
Anyway.
Well, I am going to deliberately vote for the Happiness Patrol.
Ooh.
The reason I'm doing this is because A, I think it's a consolation goal, for want of a better phrase. B, because I genuinely love the Happiness Patrol so much that I would be untrue to myself to give Remembrance of the Daleks the vote. Both stories for me are brilliant. I mean, they are season 25 and season 26 of Doctor Who are two of the best series in the series' history, in my opinion. And I get very angry with people that get sniffy about Sylvester McCoy.
Silly Nemesis.
Yeah, allowing for some of the odd stories, but he is very good as the Doctor, and all three of and both Remembrance and the Happiness Patrol, I think, are strong stories for Sylvester McCoy. I know, Luke, last time you said you didn't like the "look into my eyes, end my life" speech, but I really like it, and I just like the whole setup for the Happiness Patrol. I like the way the story develops. I like the characters in it. I just like the fact they tried to do something that wasn't just. It had something to it for me. It means a lot to me, that story. Let's put it that way.
That's fair enough.
And Remembrance of the Daleks, I love. I think Remembrance of the Daleks is I agree with you about its position in the Dalek story hierarchy. I think it is. I don't want to go into all three of all the stories like you in the passing, but I think it is the best Dalek story since Genesis. Possibly even before that. But I'm going with my heart on this one, so I'm voting for the Happiness Patrol.
Okay, Siobhan.
Oh law. Oh, I'm going to go back to my initial when I watched it on broadcast. My reaction then. I've understood Happiness Patrol a lot more. However, it came after Remembrance, and Remembrance of the Daleks just blew me away. That cliffhanger at the end of episode 1. It just, all right, wobbly Daleks, you know, that was a bit unfortunate, and they screwed the modulation up on the ring modulator, but it's a corker, isn't it? Dear God. And then that extra mystery chucked in. Oh, didn't we have trouble with the prototype? We? They. I will never try that again. I'm so sorry. Hello.
Please do.
So, for me, it has to be Remembrance. I do enjoy the Happiness Patrol a lot, and I appreciate the themes in it, and I wish it had been made in black and white. But for sheer oomph and brava, and we're not dead yet, Remembrance of the Daleks.
Okay. So it's 2-1 to Remembrance. Michael, are you going to take this to extra time or put it beyond
No.
Happiness
Not
Patrol?
even remotely. Anyone who was paying attention to my earlier comments about Happiness Patrol, I didn't even want it to get through to this stage. I am the person who likes Happiness Patrol. I like the Happiness Patrol least of the four of us, by far. And Remembrance, and I only remembered this the other day, is the story that got me back into Doctor Who, because I'd recorded them all on Betamax, I'd shoved them in a drawer, and then I had a friend visiting in the mid-90s, and they went, "We've got nothing to watch. What have you got?" And we pulled the drawer open, and everything was, of course, neatly labelled. And I Remembrance of the Daleks was there, and we went, "Let's watch that." And if it hadn't have been for that very specific occurrence, there wouldn't be a Tin Dog podcast, there wouldn't be my friends, there wouldn't be so much of my life. The fandom wouldn't have come back. I probably wouldn't have watched it when it came back. I would have just watched it in passing. The passion built from that point. Before that, I was just taping that in the way that I'd say tape Max Headroom in the middle of the night and keep those, or I'd tape some old Outer Limits or Twilight Zones or The Prisoner or whatever. It was just another genre show that I had a deep fondness for and a big liking, right? And I just happened to have them. And it wasn't until that rewatch that I went, you know what? This is more. So Remembrance of the Daleks has got such an important part of my life that I kind of just have to vote for it just for that.
I don't think anyone's going to argue with that.
No, that's fair.
I did say that I was consolation goaling it.
No, I completely get that.
No, that is fair. So we have our final, Curse of Fenwick against Remembrance of the Daleks.
Yeah.
which is not overly a surprise, but before that we have to duke it out for the 3rd, 4th place playoff. Ghostlight against Happiness Patrol.
Well, can I start by just saying, I'm going to vote for Ghostlight over Happiness Patrol? Like, that's going to come as no surprise because of how much I dislike Happiness Patrol. Ghostlight could have been in the final, and Happiness Patrol is just not for me.
Right, I'll go next, and I'm gonna because these were the ones I didn't want to make it to the final. So this is sort of like ones that I respect as stories, but are not favourites. I'm going to go for this purely on the music because we haven't talked about music so much. And I think the one of the things about the 7th Doctor era is that it's really interesting musically. You've basically got Kev McCulloch doing more scores than he should have because things fell through and he had to do more than he was contracted for.
Remember my tale about the 25th anniversary album?
Yes. But I do have a soft spot for Kev. But you've then basically got Mark Ayres and Dominic Glynn providing the rest of the scores. Fenwick's marvellous. Greatest show I haven't listened to enough. And Ghostlight, I think Ghostlight's my least favourite Mark Ayres score.
It was, to be
Dominic
fair, on broadcast, the levels of it were too high. It was too high in the mix, and he's always moaned about that. He's obviously fixed it for DVD and Blu-ray releases.
Yeah. I just think so. And listeners with long memories will recall that I am a harmonica player. It's a long time since I've played it properly. It lives in a drawer, and I occasionally get it out. And Dominic Glynn did a re-release. He's done a few re-releases over the past few years. If you haven't got them, go and get them.
Very much.
And he did his second one was a whole remix of Happiness Patrol. And I happened to be listening to it yesterday or today while I was working, and it's just gorgeous. It's lovely stuff. So purely on the soundtrack, I'm going to say that my vote in this goes to the Happiness Patrol.
Earl Sigma thanks you.
Siobhan.
Oh dear. Happiness Patrol. It's a hard one. It is a difficult one for me. But I think the themes explored in the Happiness Patrol are better than the ones in Ghostlight. And I know you don't like it, but it does have the pull the trigger, end my life scene, which I just think is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. It's a shame they didn't do the Candyman like he was supposed to be done, like he was originally thought of by the writer. But still, it's so barking mad. It's scary in its own right. So yeah, that and basically the whole thing about the Killjoys essentially being the gay community and Thatcher cracking down on them. It's got to be Happiness Patrol.
I will. I mean, you've this has been referred to several times. It's possible that the reason that I don't like that scene is because it was in one of those trailers on the VHS tapes. I forget which one, but there was one of those compilation trailers of like, it might have even been the on audio and on video for his many fans. It might have been that one. I can't remember, but definitely that clip of Happiness Patrol was the first thing of Happiness Patrol visually that I ever came across because it was in one of those compilation things. And possibly seeing it in isolation, I don't know. I just remember watching that thinking, that's stupid. And then wondering how it would fit into the context of the story. And it may be just that I forget how it fits in and just focus on that in isolation. It just didn't work in isolation. So that could be it. Who have we got left? Tony?
Well, obviously Happiness Patrol. I can't have spent all that time voting for the Happiness Patrol in the previous round and then go Ghostlight.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're both brilliant stories. I think they. I think actually the semi. I would. If you'd asked me to pick my 4 favourite Sylvester McCoy stories, these probably are the 4. So it's a tough call. I mean, I do think, much as I love the Happiness Patrol, I do think the final is probably the right final.
That's fair. So Happiness Patrol wins the bronze medal.
Can I just say, right, if you're showing the Not We an episode of Doctor Who and it's between the Happiness Patrol and Ghostlight, I know which one I'd be least embarrassed to show.
Yeah, but you're talking to a man that would show the Not We the Web Planet just for the sheer hell of it.
You know what? You're also not alone on that one either.
You're also talking to the man who did show accidentally the Not We Time and the Rani. So,
oh, you poor love. Have you been accepted back into society?
It confirmed my love for it. I mentioned it last time that I was watching it, sitting there going, I'm not embarrassed by this. So final time, and it's probably what we all expected from the off. These two consistently come high in polls of like best Doctor Who stories, not just 7th Doctor, but best Doctor Who stories ever. These are the two that make it up there into the top.
The juggernauts, really, aren't they?
And they've arrived in our final. This is tough. I don't know what I'm going to vote yet. Does anybody know what they're going to vote and wants to go first?
I do. I just don't want to go first. All right.
Well, you might have to, Siobhan.
All right. Okay, I'll take the plunge. I'm going to go for Fenwick.
Okay.
But it's...
What?
Remembrance of the Daleks is them getting there. Fenwick is them. They are there, and they're doing they're just... It all comes together perfectly. Remembrance has a couple of little bits that are a little bit wonky. I've mentioned the wobbling Daleks and the modulation. And even though it's great, Fenwick with its atmosphere and its themes and its amazing acting, and the music, as you said, Luke, that Fenwick score is stuck in my head. It's got to be Fenwick. It really does. And that's, again, I don't want to take anything from any of the other ones, Remembrance, Happiness, or Ghostlight, but it's got to be Fenwick.
Okay, that's 1 for Fenwick. Michael.
Until 5 minutes ago, it was going to be Remembrance. I've been sat here. No, I've got them. Look, my notes are here. I've literally wrote them down. I got everything sorted, everything in hand, and then I remembered talking a Dalek and confusing it to death. And that's the weak point of the entire stories for me. And that is basically...
Why didn't he do that in Dalek?
That is the only weak spot in this whole story for me. Some of the new houses in the background when they could have just moved the camera around a bit. That's a bit annoying for me. Or the modern estate when they could have just shot it better or moved locations or something. I can kind of forgive all of those things. Yeah, they're the nitpicking, but they were decisions made for budget. You've got countermeasures. Without that story, I wouldn't have one of the best Big Finish spin-offs of all time, right? Mm-hmm. But I just don't like talking the Dalek to death because, and I know originally there was meant to be some sort of weapon involved, but even then it just doesn't feel elegant enough. And Fenwick, I've watched so many times, but this is basically a last-minute goal. It's one of those you think it's all over moment. Well, not even that. It's a 4-4 last minute, somebody sneaking something over the line kind of a sporting event. Sorry, I know nothing of such things, but you know what I mean. It's only just managed it. Look, the only sport I've got anything to do with would be archery, and you just can't do that with this. You can't create some sort of tension in that. Okay, so I'm sorry.
Okay, so that's 2-0 to Fenwick. Tony.
He doesn't want to do this.
I feel like I feel like I've betrayed my childhood. I really do.
I'm running through sort of the pros and cons of both stories. Music, I think I was going to start with the music. I think Remembrance of the Daleks is the one Kef soundtrack that I think really works for me.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. Yeah,
but the music on Curse of Fenwick, I had that on CD for a long time, and I've listened to it many, many times, and I think it's Marquez is really best. I think. The Sylvester McCoy is brilliant in both. With Remembrance, it's as Siobhan said, it's the sort of start of what's to come, and Curse of Fenwick is the culmination of that version of the Doctor.
Not just the Doctor, but the whole production.
Yeah, Ace is superb in. Sorry, Sophie Aldred is superb in both. The plot, it's very, very hard to call, but I'm going to vote for Remembrance of the Daleks because the reason I'm going to vote for it is for similar reasons for why I voted for the Happiness Patrol. It comes in the end down to heart versus head, and I remember watching that first episode of Remembrance of the Daleks, that end of episode 1 cliffhanger. And I thinking, where has this been for the last X number of years? This is so brilliant to watch. It doesn't look ropey. It doesn't look cheap. It looks like people give a shit about what they're trying to do. The whole sort of way it lays itself out without unit, you've got countermeasures. We don't know they're called that then, obviously. Or
we do.
Be called that. Oh, is that what do we?
Yeah,
in episode 1.
Oh God, Countermeasures Intrusion Group.
Okay. But the whole that sort of story restore. I was after season 24, which I've said before. I have retrospectively, I now enjoy much more than I did at the time. And the flack that as a Doctor Who fan, I mean, we've all been there. We've had this conversation before.
Oh, yeah.
But Remembrance of the Daleks just restored my faith in Doctor Who as a television series. And
then the next week, the Happiness Patrol was on.
Yeah, which I love as much.
And Silver Nemesis.
Yes. Wobbly Dalek. Yes. The blowing up of the Dalek. yeah, it's rather silly and unnecessary. But the way he does it, he does. You mentioned Dalek, but what Seventh Doctor says to that Dalek is a sort of extended version of what the Ninth Doctor says when he goes, "Why don't you just die? You've got nothing to live for. You've got no orders. You've got no." That is echoed in that story.
Yeah.
It doesn't cause that Dalek to get confused and blow up. But yeah, remembers the Daleks because restored faith in Doctor Who. As you said, I wouldn't. As you said when you said that this made you what you are now. I think remembers the Daleks reinforced my belligerent love of Doctor Who in the face of the mockery of many of my friends, and that's why I have to vote for Remembrance of the Daleks. Sorry, that was a bit longer than I intended to be, but
that was cool.
Okay, so the ball is firmly in my court.
Yeah, good luck, one.
I could make it a draw, or I could make it a win for Fenwick. Okay, I just have to talk through this and figure it out. You see, the difficult thing about Fenwick is that I first saw it on VHS, and it was extended by a few minutes. Even down to like literally seconds trimmed off the end of a scene. Like the Wainwright reading from 1 Corinthians scene is different in the broadcast version to the VHS version. Because I remember watching when I finally got around to watching the broadcast version a few years ago. I got to the end of that scene and was like, "What? What? Ooh."
The answer is
that's
love.
Wrong.
Wrong edition of the Bible though. But we won't go there.
Well, yes, that translation of the Bible didn't exist in 1945. If you're purely going off broadcast versions, I think Remembrance would have to pit Fenwick to the post, because I think those extra few minutes that they added on the VHS version makes a huge difference to the coherence of the storytelling. And then obviously the extended DVD version is some nice icing on the cake in terms of visual effects and a bit more time for the story to breathe even then. But I think this is going to have to go for heart over head again, to echo Tony's phrase, and I think I am going to have to say Fenwick because I don't know. I'm so biased towards the first things that I ever saw. I love the War Games because it has so many warm memories of first watching it on a family holiday. I love Spearhead. I love Spearhead because it was the first VHS that I co-owned. My brother and I both spent like $3.50, I think it was, buying it for £7. I seem to recall.
God, that was cheap.
I know it was. I'm surprised. I think it was one of those ones where the case was slightly damaged or something. Anyway, I love the Five Doctors because it was the first VHS tape that I saw. There's so many things that I can trace back to those early days of having started reading Target novels, my brother and I then getting into collecting these things on video and loving them. And it took a while to finally get hold of a copy of Remembrance because it had come out in that tin and we'd missed the boat on getting that tin. So I can't remember when I finally saw Remembrance. So Fenwick's just been part of my Doctor Who fandom from like so early on. And again, I can say it was one of my brothers. He had it possibly as a present. It was one of his videos. So I think we have to say that, and I think although I have, as I've already said, disagreements with with some aspects of the philosophy of Fenwick, the themes are so rich, and have given me pause for thought more than the majority of other Doctor Who stories because of the subject matter. And that whole thing about the vampires confronting the vicar and the whole thing of him, his worry is that it's not about the Germans bombing us. It's about us bombing the Germans. And that moment, it's a bit of a punch, isn't it? And like you, Siobhan, that cliffhanger is just phenomenal.
It's so out of the blue. It's just you do
you're
not
like,
expect
it. Where's it going now? The first time you watch it, this is where this has been building to. This is what the final episode is going to be about. And Sorin. I mean, I don't know. I always forget that he has an unhappy ending. You know.
Mm.
You watch it and you go, oh yeah, I like Sorin, and then you go, oh no, oh yeah, he's the final body of Fenwick. Oh. And then I remember the fact that I stood on the seashore of St. Petersburg and made a whole video about the Russian in the story. And in fact, I literally, as we record, I had a comment on that video yesterday, and somebody asking a question which I didn't really understand, so I've responded to them and gone, "Did you mean this?" So there's a whole sort of richness and levels to it. So I am gonna, and so Tony, you're right. Your consolation for
consolation in the semi-finals and the final.
Yeah.
Story of my life.
So collectively we are crowning Curse of Fenwick as the best Seventh Doctor story that there is.
I didn't see that coming at all.
Well, it was going to be one of those two, to be fair.
Yeah, it was going to be one of those two, I think, all the way through. But I mean, you can't complain. They are two genuinely brilliant Doctor Who stories, and I think our issues with them aren't massive.
No.
They're just little.
We've been trying to find a reason to choose between them, essentially.
Yeah.
And that was hard. That really was difficult.
That was. So we've come to the end of another of these World Cups.
No, we don't.
We will do some more.
No, we don't.
Oh,
hello.
Siobhan has something else to say.
Hello, UFOcast listeners. Welcome to the World Cup of the 8th Doctor. Now then, the two finalists, which are already there, easily made their way through the groups, quarters and semi-rounds. And so, in the final position, we have the US telemovie with the Pertwee logo versus Night of the Doctor. Luke, would you like to go first?
Okay, well, I object to it being called the Pertwee logo. And I understand why people call it the Pertwee logo, because it's the logo from John Pertwee. But I always feel sorry for Bernard Lodge, because he designed all those logos, and so I call that logo Lodge 3.
That's very specific. That's worthy of Stephen Szymanski.
So the US telemovie with Bernard Lodge's... Also, and this is me blowing my fan trumpet, I was the person that told him that it had been used.
Oh, cool.
8 years later, when I sat down to interview him for my dissertation, I said, how did you feel about your logo being used in that American movie? And he didn't know.
What did he say?
I can't remember.
Oh, bloody hell, Luke!
No. If it was during the interview, then it's on record somewhere. I will have to go and look. I forget what he said, but I can look it out and possibly put it in the show notes for this episode. Anyway, that's entirely derailed the conversation. I mean, it has to be the TV movie, doesn't it?
Does it?
No.
Yeah, no, it is. It's the TV movie.
Why?
Okay, so Night of the Doctor, I'm in Stratford. I'm waiting to meet Michelle and James from the Doctor Who podcast to go and watch David Tennant in Richard II. And I think I must have got on the national, the RSC's Wi-Fi. I think we knew something was coming. I can't even remember the background to it. We knew something was coming, possibly. So I'm sat there watching this thing, not knowing a thing about it. And Paul McGann comes on, and I'm like, good grief. They what? What? They did it? They got him back? We've got him for, and obviously it turned out to be 8 minutes. And then Michelle and James arrive. And the first thing I'm like is, you've got to watch this thing. And they're like, can we say hello? Like, Michelle's come all the way from America. You've not met in person before. Anyway, I was just, yeah. So I suppose if we're talking about, like, initial reaction, like, being blown away by it, then Night of the Doctor. But it is, at the end of the day, it is a short cameo piece And it's there to kind of set up why John Hurt is in the Day of the Doctor, essentially. So, yeah. So, like, yes, it's brilliant from like, oh, they got Paul McGann back, but I'm not overly fond of the actual story or the context of it. Whereas the TV movie, I somehow missed it first time round. I was definitely a Doctor Who fan by 1996, but I didn't see it then. I saw it several years later on VHS. I'd even possibly read Gary Russell's novelisation first. I can't even remember that. And yes, there's so much wrong with it. And there's a very good reason it didn't go to series, and I'm glad it didn't go to series.
Mm-hmm.
But it is like proper Paul McGann Doctor running around on TV, being the Doctor for, I don't know, what is it, 50 minutes maybe once he's regenerated. And for what it is, it's lovely. And yes, it spawned however many Big Finish audios. And I'm sure if Michael can probably solo podcast an Eighth Doctor Big Finish World Cup. But yeah, it's lovely. I've forgiven it all of its faults because of the fact that it never went anywhere. It stands alone. It's a nice bit of telly, and we were so lucky to get Paul McGann as a Doctor.
Fair enough. Tony.
Got to be a TV movie. Night of the Doctor is a very nice little bonus, and you're right. I had no idea what was coming when I saw it, and I was like, I can't believe they got him to do it. And I was really hoping they would get McGann back for something in the 50th anniversary series, just to give him a nod to his status,
just to prove he definitely is canon.
Yes. But the TV movie is McGann's debut as the Doctor. He gets to be the Doctor for whatever minutes it is, 40 minutes, 50 minutes. He does enough. He does enough in that time to make you regret the fact that he never got a series. I don't think I would have liked what would have come from a series based around that TV movie, but I would have liked McGann to have been the Doctor on TV. And it's fun enough. I saw it at the BFI on the big screen during the 50th anniversary celebrations, and it kind of works as a movie on the big screen. Plus the fact I know I'm probably in the minority here. I really like Eric Roberts' Master. I just like the fact that it's not being the standard British beardy guy in a much more interesting way, I think, than John Sim did in his first stint
again
as the Master.
It's a Big Finish have taken that character with Eric Roberts and they've made him bloom.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not so great at the start, but once he gets going and once he goes full
dressing for the occasion,
dinner, I kind of adore that, and I think that almost for McGann's performance and for Eric Roberts, I would say the TV movie.
Fair enough. Okay, so that's 2 votes for the TV movie. Michael.
I must admit that the Eric Roberts Master is the closest to Missy you're going to get out of an earlier Master, out of one of the classic series.
Ooh.
I have got a love-hate relationship with the TV movie, with the whatever it was logo. And I'm going to vote for the short because cast your mind back to us. I think all three of us except Tony were on stage at Hooverville, and somebody said,
"Oh Lord,
what did you imagine for the next year's 50th anniversary?" And they asked me, unfortunately, and I happened to pitch an entire story that I'd completely thought out, where the villain was McGann. And he was in the Time War and he was wounded, right? So the baddie in the Doctor Who story was the 8th Doctor, and the current Doctors had to combine and kill him. And at the very end, they'd make him regenerate into what was then the Ninth Doctor. So you didn't have to hire Eccleston. You just had someone on the floor, and the best bit was the 10th Doctor would lean in with a flower and place it on Eccleston's body as he's regenerating and going, she's called Rose, right? And then leave. Okay, I thought the whole thing sorted out in my head, because the idea of the the War Doctor, right, was just made me physically sick, right?
Ooh,
I love John
gosh.
Hurt's performance. No, at the time, this is 10 years ago. I could not get the gears in my head were grinding, right? I've come to accept it. I've come to see the performances for what they are. I'm gutted I never got to meet John Hurt. Hiring for the role was genius, right? You couldn't get Eccleston because you couldn't get him for love nor money, but I wanted something beautiful for McGann, and I wanted to see him in pain because he does pain in Big Finish really well. I wanted to see him as the person trying to end everything, which he could have done as the War 8th Doctor, the wounded one. He didn't have to regenerate to become a different character. I mean, let's face it, how many humans have said that to the Doctor as he got older? So there's that, but there's also 1996. And I've got very distinct memories being in a hotel with Chris Ellis at the Cardiff, weirdly. I was in Cardiff watching Doctor Who in 1996 in a hotel because there was an animation convention. And I was with Chris and we watched it then. But we'd both already queued at HMV in the middle of the night to buy the VHS. And we'd rushed home and watched them. And I remember being massively disappointed. And that level of disappointment of the whole half-human thing, more grinding of gears in my head, I just couldn't forgive for years because I'm just a bigot and a pointless person. But Doctor Who was something for me and it just didn't work. So mentioning all the Big Finish companions, having a 5-minute piece, and I'd grown to love McGann by the time that was on TV, so I'm going to vote for that one.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Michael. So that's 2 votes to 1. I'm sorry, boys. We're going into extra time because I'm voting for Night of the Doctor.
Why, Siobhan?
I enjoyed the TV movie when I watched it. It was nice to have it back, but something did feel off about it. And the story just didn't quite... It just got it wrong. We all know McGann was wonderful. So was Daphne Ashbrook. And I agree.
So was McCoy, getting back
Master.
to what we were actually talking about.
Indeed, yes. But what really gave me the chills was Night of the Doctor. You know, I'm a doctor, just probably not the one you were expecting. And it finally gave McGann a really decent send-off. We didn't expect that. We didn't deserve it. But Moffat, being Moffat, said, let's do it. And we got that for the 50th. And it rounded off Paul McGann's... Sorry, Tony is on video here and he's dressing for the occasion. And it just rounded off McGann. We needed that. It was that sense of closure. So I'm going for Night of the Doctor. Boys, how are we going to solve this?
Well, can I just say that Night of the Doctor also
we can
mentions
leave
all
it
of the
there.
Big Finish companions I love. What? And just have them combined into one big semi-final that goes on forever.
Shall we just give it to Chimes of Midnight and leave it like that?
Yeah, actually, I can live with that.
Yep. So, this ends the Flashing Blade portion of this podcast. We now hand you back to Luke Harrison of the UFOcast. Viewers in Scotland may have their own show.
Oh, you said UFO. The Ed Straker way. Well, thanks for that interlude, Siobhan. We were puzzling offline about how we would do the 8th Doctor World Cup. So
Invoicing post,
it
love.
in here seems quite appropriate. So I think it only remains to say we haven't got any plans for any more, but we will formulate some plans for some more of these.
Oh, yeah. They're very enjoyable to do. Let's keep going.
Fun. So until we are back in your logos again, I was Luke.
I was Tony.
I was Michael.
And I am eternally Siobhan.